Good morning and welcome to 2022. My God, doesn't that just seem like so far away? Like I could not have imagined 2022 when I was younger. So, Happy New Year, everybody, and thank you for joining me. As always, I am Julie Hall, and I'm so happy to be here with you. Excuse me, I do still have just a little bit of the cough left. I had a really crappy end of the year, and sorry, I'm just making sure that I've got everything here as I come on through. So I ended up with COVID and who knows when I actually got it. And hi Lee, I can see you there. Thank you for joining us. So I've ended up with COVID over Christmas/January. I had a infection in the saliva gland. I had conjunctivitis, so I basically spent a month and a half in bed. And the biggest problem that I had, first world problems, is that I have been running out of books to read. The writers that I love aren't writing the books as quickly as I would like them to. Okay, so I can see that I've got everything up and running. I do hope you all had a better Christmas than I did, and I'm sure you did. And look, I got to go to my niece's wedding, which is probably where I caught the COVID. But life's pretty good. So I do have a couple of new things to show you. But what I want to start with, because we are going to go through today the vinyl front messenger bag. Now, this is my old messenger bag, and it was starting to fall apart a little bit after, 10 odd years, 7 odd years. So I have frankenfurted it for some of my parts, and I'll show you that as I go through. But because there's so much that I do want to show you today, what I want to do is get into the stitching pretty quickly. So let's come through and I'll show you what I'm up to. And I'll actually... Now this idea came to me, was stolen from Kat Daniels, one of our members. This was a design that she was actually test sewing, and that was saying that she was going to use. So I'm stitching this one out, and I think this is going to be my second bag. So what I've done is I've stitched half of the design, and I'm going to continue on with the second half. Good morning. Thank you very much, Michelle. I appreciate you saying that, my dear. But one of the things that I love about this bag is that you can do it in just whatever you feel like. So this fabric, let's see. This was fabric that I found at Spotlight on the one day that I was out, which was Boxing Day. I went to Spotlight and I went to a wedding reception, and that was it. But I fell in love with this fabric, and I thought it was just a little bit different. So that's the vinyl that I've used. However, any sort of vinyl, you could do this in cork, whatever you want. And I've taken a couple of steps yesterday just so that I can show you through them after we've finished the embroidery. And the other reason I bought then, of course, was simply that it was on sale. And good morning, Helen Cassidy. Thank you for joining us. So, how was everybody else's Christmas? Anybody get any good stitching tools for Christmas? Rhonda Burnett, thank you for joining us. So while we're stitching, possibly also a good time, and it'll be interesting. This one was a hard one to see a little bit. I'll move this all out of the way. So this was my last week's project. I'd started to feel sort of okay. Sue Wilton's, oh, very hot and steamy. We actually had rain yesterday and it's quite steamy today. So yeah, I've had the aircon on since 9. So you can see here what I've done is trapunto, and I'm just loving this as a nice cute little baguette bag, and loving just doing something slightly different for the handle. I do wish I'd had this done for the wedding reception I went to. It would have been much nicer than the one that I carried, but you know, can't do everything. Now, something I read, something I saw this morning. Ew, yuck, 36. We're 21. Like, you know, we're Canberra hot, not real hot. So Edward's gone back to work, but all that means is he now closes the door to his office. The girls went back to school yesterday. And my little baby boy started his first day of school. I was just writing a letter to my mother-in-law and talking about how she, when Cameron started kindy, Edward was over in India working for Ford. And Jean, my mother-in-law, came down and looked after the girls for me so that I could take Cameron to school. And yeah, that compared to this morning's drop-off. So the girls are turned 16 on Christmas Day. And it's been great. Like they've really been able to come through and you know, all of my kids now, they cook a meal once a week. You know, the girls went together and did their back to school shopping because they don't have uniforms this year. In Canberra or in the ACT, year 11, 12's kind of like mini college. So they went out just, you know, mind you, they took my credit card. Cameron has quit his job at McDonald's. I think his last week's this week. Because, couldn't believe it, the poor bugger, there's been like lots of people being off, etc. So they asked him to do an extra shift. And then when he was on that shift that they asked him to do, the manager called and berated him for taking too many shifts, because it's not not fair on other or it's because it's costing them too much money in overtime. And Cameron's there, fine, I'll go home. No, just... And, you know, yeah, there was nobody else to do the shift. They were begging him to do it. Poor bastard does what they ask. and then gets nabbed for it. So he's hoping to get a job with like JB or something like that. Oh yuck, 4 air cons running. So yes, I'm loving the idea of doing a bag of the month. And one of the reasons I like the idea of the whole bag of the month thing is because it's a great way to get into your Christmas presents as well. Now the design that I'm using is available for purchase, and so it comes in 4 different styles. You've got the tape measure, and the spools of thread, and the sewing machine. So 4 different styles, and they're all different sizes, or there are 4 different sizes to use as well. The smallest is 130 by 180, so your standard 5 by 7. Good morning, Lynn. I hope you're doing well, my darling. And if Jack's there with you, good morning, Jack. How weird does it feel that we are already into February? And I saw a terrible thing on Facebook the other day. It was 1970 to now is the same as 1918 to 1970. And I'm thinking, that can't be right. That just seems like so much difference. Now, if you're looking at giving this a go and you're having trouble finding a vinyl, the first vinyls that I ever used, and by first I mean up till now, are the vinyl that you get at Spotlight to cover your table. And that's also where you will get the clear vinyl as well. Felt really good to bring out all of my bright colours this morning. Like, it's just so cheerful. And I could feel that was going to do that. You know how when you're hearing something and you're not sure what it is, but you know that something's not quite right. Hasn't the weather been strange? Did you all see my post on using the silica gels? Now, it turned out beautifully. Like, I did what must amount to about 70,000 stitches yesterday. Okay. So it also helps if you make sure it is wrapped around that. Let's see if I don't have to do that next. And it was one of those things, I knew it was crappy thread. But I just want to use it up. Oh, me too, Rhonda. Like, I'm a 1972 baby. You know, that was a big one. But I did get, last week was a big week for us. Some good, some bad. So last week it was 19 years since I married Edward. So that was of course us and my sister and her husband and her children, my brother and his daughter and my parents. So yeah, I cannot believe we are 19 years. Rhonda was in high school in 72. I feel the same way when people are talking about, you know, being born in the 90s or... That's really cool, Michelle. I finished toilet training in 74. Good news was I mastered it. Oh, I am liking how this one's coming together. And Jasanka, thank you for joining us. I hope you had a lovely Christmas. I know you guys, because you're Orthodox, it was only like a week or two ago, wasn't it? I'm hoping I got a nice picture or two with at my niece's wedding. I'm hoping I got a nice picture of our family, but it was taken on it was taken on Cameron's phone, and the little bugger hasn't given them to me yet. Good morning, Louise. Thank you for joining us. Oh, Sue Wilton, your baby turned 30. And I was crying over my baby's turning 16. Now, Edward was in the office just before, and just before we started, and I was just giving him an update on getting them all off to school. And Cameron telling me this morning that he doesn't see university in his future plans. It's lovely when mummy gets to break that to daddy, isn't it? But we shall live. So now I'm at the point I'm trying to get, because the girls had to put their subjects in for year 11, 12, October last year. Since then they've changed sort of their plans and what they'd like to do, etc., or clarify. So they have to alter. And they have to do it. Like, I can't go to the school, it's the middle of COVID. So trying to get these kids to sort of, think it all between them is just hilarious. And I can see we've got Bernie Souser watching as well. Thank you for joining us, Bernie. I hope you're having a lovely day. Okay. All of our little spools of thread. Oh, exactly. Look, I'm not worried about him not going to uni. So long as he has a plan, and that plan is not hibernating in his room and mooching off his parents, we're all good. Like, I'm so good. And thankfully, we live in democracy's playground. So there is, like, he could get an internship with the government in a lot of different IT things, and that would be really, really easy for him. Okay. Now, while this one goes ahead, I'm just going to be 2 minutes, guys. Just have a move. Please, stop amongst yourselves. apologise for that, guys. On the upside, I didn't have to show any of you my friend's pyjama pants. Oh, good morning, Rhonda. Mild weather where you are. That's fantastic. Oh, the other thing I've got to show off. So, this little girl here, last week, had this tiny, he was born about 7 weeks early, and he was 1.3 kilos. So I've got a new great nephew. So very excited about that. Okay, so while we're doing this one, just while we're finishing stitching, a couple of things that I will show you, because you can really, this is one of those bags that is, once you've got the basics, you can turn it into a gazillion different styles. So, couple of tricks. Use a walking foot. I really would not have thought that there was that much difference up until I tried to use my standard sewing machine with a standard foot on it yesterday to create my straps. Now the straps are not part of the original pattern. Instead, what happened, so on the original pattern, I'll come over here, what you do is you use a piece of strapping. I didn't like how that was going to look on this fabric, so I looked at how wide the strap was, and then I created my own. And all I've done is I've cut a 3-inch piece of fabric, let's say this was my 3-inch piece of fabric. Use your imagination, ladies. I've drawn a line right down the center, and then I folded and stitched right along there, and then I folded and stitched right along there. And what you end up with is a quite nice stitched handle. The only other thing that you do need to take into consideration, and I'm just looking for the halfway mark of my handle here so that I can show you what I've done, is you want to cut that and join it on that 45-degree angle. And the reason you do that is so that then when you are doing this stitching, you don't have a massive piece of bulk. You've got one seam up here and one seam all the way down here. And there are plenty of YouTube videos on doing that, on making handles. But of course you can just use the strapping. Okay. Oops. Now, I've just received a message. Oh, some people, I tell you, have the life. Little lunch and big lunch. It's a plate of scones with jam and cream, which look amazing. And then 2 lobsters. Somebody is living a much better life than I. Now, when it comes to your lining fabrics on the bag, I recommend, and this goes for all bags, I recommend when you look at lining fabrics to go for something light. And that is because you have to look into the bag. It's always going to be dark and cadaverous, but the lighter you can make it, the better. So I would, and once again, this is just from the stash. It's just a good way of using things up, and you don't need much for the lining. Don't worry that I've gone so far already. I'm going to show you through all of this once we have finished our stitching. So there's only one more colour to go after this, and that is the zipper pull and the teeth on the zipper. Don't worry guys, temperature's just heating up here in Canberra. We're at 23 now. Yeah, you can just see how terrible it is for us. So, what have we all been stitching over Christmas? Somebody had to do more work than me. I refuse to believe that anybody could do less work than me. While that's stitching, I will just show you the other one. So as I was starting to feel better last week, and I'd been playing around with this idea in my mind for a while. So this is my journal cover, notebook cover, which we did, I think, our first class 2 years ago now. What I've done is I've altered it so that it has a zippered pocket coming into it as well. What I love about that is that that is big enough to store my phone. The changes that the girls have asked me to make to one for them is they want this panel to be clear so that when their phone's in there and they're writing something at school, they can see if a message pops up, but they don't have to open it up or anything like that, which I think's kind of cool. The other thing that I'm thinking is I'd probably like this to be either quilted, the same as this, or to be in the cork or vinyl. Okay, let's come to our last colour. So Helen Cassidy's been doing finishing off. Well, once you've finished yours, Helen, you can always come down and finish my stuff off. I think this year's going to be the year of the bifocal. We met at the wedding reception. The guy who officiated our wedding, because he also officiated my niece's. He's a very good friend of my sister's, and I knew him quite well when I was seriously dating another guy many years ago, who he was a good friend of, and which seems kind of weird, but whatever. So Edward was talking to him and saying, you know, look, 19 years, quite honestly, what's the returns policy? What are we looking at for, you know, for warranties and things like that? He's decided it's all too much effort. Okay, so that is my embroidered panel complete. So what I'm now going to do is take that off, and I need to change my machine over to ordinary sewing. Foot off. And as I said, what I've found is this just works so much better with a walking foot. So normally, if I didn't have the cameras on, I would use I would be embroidering on this machine, and then I'd be using the machine on the other side to do sewing at the same time. But the walking foot on the 15,000 is just so good and beautiful to use that realistically it's really just not a problem. Okay, so here I have my design, and that fabric is cut as it needs to be. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get rid of the basting stitches with a bit of water, and this is the basting thread, washable. And one of the reasons that I've done a little bit of prep on this is because we want all of this to dry before we go through the process of putting it together. Once you've done that, just start picking out the threads, because of course there's nothing holding them to the top because we've already picked those out. Now, once you've done that, can you see there are tiny little bits of white there? What I like to do is just wait for that to dry a bit and then just take them off with your thread brush, and they will come all out. The next thing that we are going to do, and I can see we've got Bon Bon Mon just came on. This looks great, thank you very much. How long have I had my 15,000? I've had it for 3 or 4 years now, I think. I'm loving it, and it really does hold up for the fix, and we will be going through lots and lots of layers here, and you will see. Okay, Cheryl Harwood, thank you for joining us. Did you use normal thread on the bottom? I've used embroidery thread on the embroidery, and I'll change the bobbin over to normal thread for the sewing. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken, so this piece has already dried. What I've got is I've got my fabric and I've got my clear vinyl. Now, if your clear vinyl is a little bit puckered, either leave it out in the sun if you've got a nice sunny day on a flat surface, or hold a steam iron over it and steam it a little bit, and then place a book on top of it. Either way works fine. Once I've got my plastic sitting on top, I can take my bag. Now, what did I call that piece? Was it the front back panel? Front pocket. The back front pocket. Lay down and stitch. And then I've top stitched along there. And what the top stitching does is it just comes through and allows you a nicer finish. So what I'm now going to do is come through and I want to top stitch along this bottom part. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm making sure the bulk is on this side, and I need to change that around. So roll that up. Don't want it that far across. And all you want is just things to be held down. And I'm going to use a 3.5. And you can see with the walking foot, it really does hold and allow you to go through those fabrics beautifully. Okay. So, oh, Rhonda, yeah, you're a lover of the machine as well. Look, there are some beautiful brands of machines out there, and they do end up like our children. But for me, this is just a beautiful machine. And what I can now do is just trim that excess off so that it doesn't distract my eye. Okay, if you want on the front of your bag, and a lot of this is what you personally like and how you use a handbag, you can at this stage pop a magnetic clasp on the inside, so around there, around 1 inch down of your front pocket, and then match it up with the main bag, and that'll just give you an extra sort of security piece. Personally, I only store like receipts and things like that in this section, so I'm not going to do that one today. The next thing that we're going to do is take our two main bag pieces and our two main lining pieces. On one of your lining pieces, you are going to create a sleeve by stitching along the bottom, turning inside out, and then you can stitch that pocket down, and you'll see I've only stitched it down on the bottom and up some sides, and that is just enough for me to have space for the phone. My phone's not going to fit in there, but my pens will, a couple of business cards. You can make as many or as few pockets here as you like. You can even have pockets on both sides if you wish. From there, we're going to come through, and of course we are going to do our zippers. And And I know how much you all love doing zippers. I've got a number 5 zipper here that I've used, and you can go chunkier if you wish. They're just harder to stitch over. Pop your zipper head on and come through. Now, how many times have you had a handbag that you like wearing on your left side, but the zipper goes on the right side? This is the time to start thinking about that. So, I like to wear my bags on my left hip. Therefore, I'm making sure that this zipper is on the right hand side. It gets covered up by placing the strap, whether it be webbing or whether it be one that you've made yourself. And you want to make sure you're placing it outside of the seam allowance. So that is about 1 inch in. And then on the other side, I've got my D-ring, which is what's going to allow us to set the strap adjuster and set on there. And then I've just attached the zipper as you normally would. So vinyl on one side, lining on the other, vinyl on one side, lining on the other. Make sense so far? Please do feel free to ask questions as we go along, guys. So the next thing that we're going to do is start pulling everything together. Now, of course, all of this is in the instructions, except for making your own strap. So I'm going to take the strap away there, and the next thing I'm going to do, making sure I'm working from the front, and we know that the front is the one that's got the strap already attached, we are going to come through, and this is one of those times that those nice big chunky sewing clips come in handy. We're going to start popping all of these pieces together. Now, I like using the sewing clips because it means that you're not hurting the bag itself by putting pins through everywhere. Now, once I've got that, and I've only got to attach the vinyl, not the lining, I can come through and once again pull my strap aside and now fold and pin the front of the bag. And there is just a little shuffle that we need to sort of do as we go along. I don't know what I dropped there, but scissors. And, well, Michelle, I was trying to work out how many years ago it was that we did this at your retreat. Would it have been 4? Is there a reason the back is longer? The back actually isn't too much longer, it's just really shit cutting. And so it's actually about the same. Yeah, that's just crappy cutting along that tiny bit there. Okay. Now, you want to make sure that that pocket doesn't fall open. And okay, so now I am ready for some sewing. 2018. Oh God, yeah. Absolutely, Gwen Smith. You know, here for a good time, not a long time. So what I am going to do is come on through, and I need to change my foot here. And I was not smart enough to have the right foot out, so I'll have to grab that. Oh, look, I could try and lie and say that I'm really, really good, but, you know, you guys know me by now. Okay. And what we are going to do, it's always a question of which end do you start. I'm going to come up. Mind you, I did love being, oops-a-days. Set it to default, you moron. So that my stitching is back in the center. I did love using the electric scissors, and we're sold out at the moment, but I've got more coming in, and they're coming in a very cute case as well, because it was just so easy. Stitching over zippers is always difficult. If you need to, stitch to the zipper, lock it, and then come to just past the zipper. Now this here, where my finger is here, is where my metal D-ring is. It's good to be aware of that so that you do not accidentally try and stitch through the metal. Now, I don't want to stitch across the bottom yet because I need to hide all of the strap, and to do that I need the sides put together first. So instead, we're at our zip. Now, I want to come through to just where that begins, because I have to leave a hole to pull the bag right side out. And it's easier, I have learnt, to leave that hole in the side than it is to leave it in the bottom. Now, by pulling my hand through here and opening up the zipper, I can now, if I go on the right side of course, pull all of that through. So that I can now stitch along the bottom here. Oops. Okay, now Michelle Reynolds, you haven't even put your lining together. Oh my heavens. Okay, so all I'm doing here is making sure I have all 4 layers in there so that I'm not wasting my time pulling everything out. And look, this is longer than it needs to be, but I figure because I'm doing 2 bags this week, it won't go to waste. Okay. And look, we are so near to being done. So the next thing that we're going to do is pull out and corner stitch along these 2 corners and along these 2 corners. But this is where most people make a mistake. And it's because the bulk of the fabrics all go on one side, and that's because we've got the pocket in there. So what I do is I place my hand inside here. I'm waving at you, you just can't see. And I need to be able to feel that clear vinyl to show me that I am on the right side. And then what it's going to be is matching up those seams and stitching down. Now, this is where you can quite easily, possibly, see a stuff up. Now, I don't know whether, I'm trying to work out whether Janome have a jig in their stash. Normally, they do. Haha. So, in Janome's stash, if you've got a smaller machine, you can also use this button on your standard A foot, which will keep the foot flat. But what the jig does is, and it's been a while, so excuse me if I get it wrong, is it just holds that foot up there and allows me should have been showing you guys. Okay, so it sits underneath and holds the foot up there and just allows you to stitch over uneven, heavy areas. Okay, and that is actually a really nice solid stitch. Don't go thinking that you know everything and you don't need to put your hand in for the second. I've done that. I've stuffed that up before. Be smarter than I. As you will know, if there's a way to stuff something up, I try and find it before you guys can. So, oops. Okay. So that's when we hit the tough stuff. Murphy's Law says. Okay. And I'll just take that needle out because we really don't want that in our bag for the rest of its life. Okay. Now, must show, because I'm loving it, and there we go. Oops. The little silicone pocket, just keeping my needles where they need to go. Now, I'm just using my standard 1175. I didn't bother putting in a heavier needle. If you are the type of person who does like to change their needles to match what the fabrics that they are doing, please feel free. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just a forgetful kind of a person. Ah, that's interesting. That seems to be less about the stitching and more about the fact that that thread was caught up somewhere. Okay, so we've stitched across both bottoms there. I'm now going to stitch across, and I see a question here. My lining still has the pin in it, Michelle Reynolds is saying. How does the silicone pocket attach? It's just sticky. So non-magnetic, just sticky. Now, it is actually my sister's birthday this week, or next week. I have thought about sending her one of these. And like, I've done them even. Think outside the box. If you are a person who has, it does come off quite easily. The only thing, and as I pull it off there, it's not leaving any residue, and mine's been up for about 5 or 6 weeks. But what you might need to do is just give it a little bit of rubbing alcohol if it leaves any residue. I'm using cotton thread to join this together, just a Gutermann. Okay, so then we birth the bag. Always the nastiest part. So it goes inside out. And squish that lining in, and I'm going to come through and fold over this piece. Now, if you want, and if you're a good person, yada yada yada, you could either hand stitch this, or you could use a colour match thread. I'm assuming that nobody's going to look at my lining, and I'm just going to stitch this in black. Well, Trish Callum, did you finish your bag? I did this for a girlfriend once, many years ago, like we're talking 15. I did it with her son's, a photo of her son printed on fabric. Now, I've got to squeeze this in to get it down. So we're just closing that lining. Okay, almost done. Now we pull the entire thing inside out. Okay, so what we need to do is come through and make sure all of those corners are nicely poked out. And that can take some time. But what we then have here, oops, I need the cameras to be smart enough to move whenever I'm doing anything. Okay, liking that so far. So the next thing, and there's really only 2 more steps. So let me show you. And this will be good. It takes a very special person to lose things as quickly as I am able to. Thankfully, I am skilled and talented. Okay. So, what we need to do is grab, it was on the floor, our strap adjuster. And all we do is you thread, and whenever I forget how to do this, I just look at an older style handbag that's got one of these adjusters on it, and it will show you exactly how to do it. Okay, so come up one side, and work out exactly how long you want your strap to be. Okay, so I'm going to say that's going to be more than enough. Excuse me 1 second. I'm in class, can I call you?
Yeah, no worries, bye.
Okay. So, I've got my strap, and I'm making sure at all points that it is straight, so that this back is always the back. And then all we do is thread it back into here. Now it is harder with the vinyl strap because the vinyl strap is thicker. Okay, up there. And once again, there are YouTube videos showing this as well. And then I just stitch along there to secure. So a couple of different stitches, and then that can be adjusted as I go along. That's the second last part. The last part that I'm going to then do is come through, and I'm going to top stitch all the way around the zipper here, just so that I've got a really nice finish, because at the moment that vinyl is making things sit up a little bit. So giving it that top stitch will, I think, really finish that off nicely. So what are we thinking? To me, once you get started with this one, it truly is okay. Oh, great. Bonbon, I'm glad you're going to make that. Thank you so much for joining us. So it's one of those things that, yeah, once you've made one, like, you know, you can just make 100. You can change the size of it once you've made one to suit you. You know, my ass can carry a bigger handbag, simply because it's but it's really up to you. So you could really scale it down for a child's one, or up for an adult one. You could make it the same size as your laptop if you needed to. It really is whatever you want. Michelle, yeah, I knew there was somebody who used it for their laptop. I couldn't remember whether it was you or not. So thank you so much for joining us today. I am going to do it again on Thursday evening at 7 o'clock. If you wish to watch again, you are more than welcome. And of course the designs are there for purchase. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, and I'll try and cover them off for you. Next week we are going to do the first, I know I've got the sample somewhere, here, nope, sample somewhere very, very safe. Hold on a second, guys. And yes, you're going to see my beautiful friend's pajama pants. So I fell out of love with the border on the block of the month. Let me show you what it was. So this was the border that I originally set up, and I just wasn't quite happy with it. So instead I got some lovely fabric sent to me. I'm trying to find something kind of grassy green, and what I've done is to go with that small town thing, we're doing so this one's everybody on the bike track, and I've got a park, and I've got a sand pit, and a couple of other things like that. But next week is the first in our block of the month, and it is the Sheer Brilliance. So I look forward to seeing you there for that. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop me a line, and I'd love to hear from you. Other than that,